Behind the curtain of great are the myths. Episode 6. Birdie as the interpreter of myth. One of the most important narrative functions in great are the myths, is the role Birdie plays not only as participant in the story, but as its observer and interpreter. Although the novel follows Birdie's emotional development from adolescence into early adulthood, her narrative role extends beyond that of a traditional protagonist. She occupies a position familiar in many great works of literature, the witness figure, the person who stands close enough to power, beauty, or transformation to observe it clearly, yet distant enough to recognize its illusion. Birdie is therefore not merely a character inside the story of myth-making. She is also the consciousness through which myth is recognized, remembered, and interpreted. The witness figure in literature. Throughout literary history, certain narrators occupy a distinctive position within their stories. They are not always the central agents of action. Instead, they serve as the interpreters of events that unfold around them. These figures stand slightly to the side of power or spectacle, observing it with a mixture of fascination and distance. A well-known example is Nick Carraway in The Great Gatsby. Nick is not the mythic figure of the novel, Gatsby is. Yet it is Nick's presence, perception, and memory that allow Gatsby's story to be understood. Without Nick, Gatsby would remain only a spectacle. Through Nick, he becomes a legend. Similarly, in Moby Dick, Ishmael serves as the reflective consciousness that witnesses Captain Ahab's obsessive pursuit of the whale. Ishmael is not the center of the dramatic action, but he is the voice through which the meaning of that action is articulated. In another form, the narrator of Marcel Proust's In Search of Lost Time performs a related function. Through memory, reflection, and observation, the narrator reconstructs the world of childhood and youth, transforming lived experience into literary meaning. Birdie belongs to this lineage of witness figures. She stands near the center of events, yet her true power lies in interpretation, proximity to myth. Birdie grows up within close proximity to myth formation. As a young girl arriving in Memphis, she becomes part of a group of friends whose lives appear ordinary in the moment, but will later acquire symbolic weight. Among them is the boy who will eventually become one of the most recognizable cultural figures of the 20th century. The crucial aspect of Birdie's position is that she knows him before the myth fully forms. She encounters the boy not as a symbol, but as a person. Shy, dreamy, uncertain, fascinated by music and possibility. Because she witnesses the early stages of this transformation, she sees something that the later world cannot easily see, the fragile humanity that existed before the public myth hardened around it. This position gives Birdie a particular form of narrative authority. She is not simply recounting a famous story. She is recalling the moment before fame reshaped it. Her perspective allows the novel to explore one of its central themes, how myths emerge gradually from ordinary lives. Memory as authority. The authority of Birdie's voice comes not from power, but from memory. The novel is structured around recollection, the act of looking backward at youth from the vantage point of adulthood. Memory becomes the mechanism through which the emotional meaning of earlier experiences is clarified. This structure echoes a long literary tradition in which memory serves as a tool for understanding the past. The events of youth often appear differently when revisited later, after time has added distance and perspective. Birdie's narrative voice carries this reflective quality. She remembers not only what happened, but how it felt to be present while the world around her was changing. The transformation of the boy into a cultural icon, the shifting landscape of post-war America, the friendships and romances that defined adolescence, all of these are filtered through the lens of recollection. In this sense, memory becomes a form of authorship. Birdie does not merely remember the past, she interprets it. standing near power. Another key element of the witness figure is proximity to power. Birdie's life repeatedly places her near individuals and environments where cultural power is being formed or performed. Whether through the rise of celebrity, the rituals of elite society, or the symbolic landscapes of America's major cities, she moves through spaces where identity and mythology are constantly being constructed. Yet Birdie herself never becomes the object of public myth. Instead, she occupies a quieter role, the observer who sees the mechanisms by which myth operates. This position gives her a form of insight that the mythic figures themselves often lack. Those who become symbols rarely have the distance necessary to understand their own transformation. The witness figure, by contrast, can recognize the process as it unfolds. Birdie's power lies in this awareness, the interpreter. Because of this narrative position, Birdie ultimately functions as the interpreter of the novel's central phenomenon, modern myth-making. The story of the boy's rise to global fame is not presented as a conventional biography. Instead, it is filtered through Birdie's understanding of what that transformation meant emotionally, culturally, and symbolically. She observes the moment when a human life begins to turn into a story larger than itself. At the same time, she recognizes the distance between myth and reality, between the private boy she once knew and the public figure the world will eventually see. This tension between closeness and distance defines Birdie's role throughout the novel. She is both participant and observer, friend and interpreter, the quiet authority of witness. In the end, Birdie's greatest narrative power lies not in action, but in perception. She stands within the story of myth-making while retaining the ability to recognize it. Her memories preserve a version of events that existed before public narrative reshaped them. In doing so, she transforms personal recollection into literary meaning. Like Nick Carraway, Ishmael, and the narrator of Proust, Birdie reminds us that history is not only made by those who become myths. It is also preserved by those who witnessed the moment before the myth began.